is Shawn Lane, this incredible new guitarist who has simply exploded onto the music scene recently? Known up till now by only those who have seen him play live or have watched his bootleg videos, Shawn Lane's reputation as a monster player is now bringing him worldwide attention. REH and CPP are very proud to present for the first time Shawn Lane in this two-part instructional and performance video series. So we hope you enjoy getting to know this very talented and amazing musician, Shawn Lane.
Welcome to my instructional video. Me and my friend, the drummer Shawn Rickman, are going to play some songs from my album Powers of 10. We're going to do a little improv on some of those songs. Then I'm going to talk for a little while about some of the techniques that I do, some of the unusual techniques, and also some of the basic scales and exercises that I used when I was first starting guitar that might help you to advance towards some of the things that I play. And I also talk a little bit about some of my influences and some of the things that I think about music and vibrato and other things in guitar. So let's get started by tuning. Well, I've been asked a lot over the years how I developed a lot of the techniques that I use, especially people are interested in a lot of the fast techniques, and they're always asking me about exercises and the different kinds of things that I've done to learn and to play and execute the fast things that I play. And the answer is it's not a very simple thing. People expect an answer real quick, and it takes a long time. So hopefully I can explain some things in this section that'll give you an insight into that. I've been playing about 19 years, and I started a lot of the heavy practicing I did when I was about 12, 13 years old. I practiced, constantly then, but I haven't practiced, worked on the technique much in probably 8 or 9 years. I've worked mostly now on just musicality and what to do with the technique. But a lot of the techniques I evolved were based on my love for instruments other than guitar. I listen to a lot of piano recordings and a lot of saxophone recordings. I'm especially a big fan of a lot of great classical piano recordings and stuff. So the sound I heard in my head and the sound that influenced me was not necessarily very guitar-oriented sound. So I developed a series of techniques that kind of give a different sound to the guitar. Yeah, one good thing to do that I used to do was to learn pieces for other instruments on guitar. And I really love classical music, but instead of learning how to play fingerstyle or gut string classical guitar, I would learn other pieces like clarinet or violin things on the guitar. One thing I could play a little bit of is a thing that Jascha Heifetz did called Horace Staccato. It was a good guitar exercise in alternate picking. Okay, that's a good example of a piece that's a classical piece for violin, played on guitar. It's kind of a lot of fun. And I encourage you to learn a lot of other pieces. Just look up any pieces, especially for violin or clarinet or flute. Those instruments transcribe well to guitar in the classical realm. There's a lot of single note type playing that you can do that if you want to get into classical music but not gut string classical guitar, that I would encourage you to learn a lot of the single line violin, concerto type pieces and things like that. This is a lick that I developed that's kind of a variation on a fairly commonly played lick that's most of the time when it's played it's picked, all the notes are picked. And I developed a way to play it that it's still picking but it gives it a more legato sound. Let me play it for you. Okay, this lick is a variation on rhythmic groupings of fours on 3 notes per string, which is a pretty popular lick. It's been done by a lot of people. Al Di Meola, Yngwie, different people. And normally it's just played with groups of fours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And people pick every note on it, and it's a certain sound that way. It's a staccato type of sound. But this way you can do it, and it gets a more legato sound, and you can use that kind of floating of the pick technique. Also, the important thing to keep in mind, the way I do the picking on licks like this, is by tilting the pick. If you tilt the pick slightly in a sideways angle, for me it's comfortable to tilt it up like this. For other people it might be comfortable to tilt it down. I've seen people do it both ways. But that's one thing to remember. That gets the smooth kind of sound. But the way I do this lick is you pick 2 notes, and then 2 notes not picked, 2 notes not picked, and then 1 note. So if you have 3 groups of 4s, then you have something like 1, 2, and then 2 notes not picked, and then 2 notes picked again, and then 2 notes not picked, and then 1 note picked, and then 3 not picked. So that would be 12, and you're picking 2 like that. So slow that is. And then it has a different kind of sound to it. It's more legato. Okay, so that lick gives you a different sound that's not a staccato sound. Most of the time when that lick is played, it's staccato. And also when you play it this way, it's not really very identifiable as 4s. Instead of sounding like you really don't know what you're hearing because the accents are kind of thrown off, and it sounds more like it's more like a violin type of sound or something. Also, there's a way you can do that up, where you're repeating the same thing on groups of 2 strings, and then you're going to the next group of 2 strings up, and then on up. So you can go up with it too. This is some variations on that, using both the up and the down. One thing that's helped me a lot in passages like that is practicing in one position symmetrically across the neck. It doesn't make sense as any scale or anything, but it's just... So you could go. That's kind of a medium speed. Fast would be. And that way you can concentrate on getting the coordination down between the two hands, and you don't have to worry about a lot of different shifting for scales and stuff. And you'll find that once you have the basic coordination down, just in a symmetrical shape, then it'll be a lot easier to move it into whatever scale you want, if you want to do it in a major scale or a minor scale. But the first key is getting the coordination down. And then you can even practice things like chromatically moving up the neck doing the same coordination, which is more difficult. One of the things I just did had a very chromatic sound, and it was the same coordination, but doing a lot of hand position shifts. This has a strange sound because you're moving up the neck, but the pitch usually isn't going up. The pitch is either staying the same or going down. So it's like... One of the things I do a lot is mix up different rhythmic groupings of notes. That I talked about earlier was the 4 notes rhythmic groupings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Another way is to do rhythmic groupings of 5. But this is a thing where I mix rhythmic groupings of 4 and 5. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you play that over a 4/4 type of beat, it's really interesting because you can't pin down where 1 is ever. It's always just floating around over it. And this uses, instead of using the hammer-ons, this is more, and hammer-ons and pull-offs, this is more of a strict alternate picking type of lick. Again, I start on the upstroke. Some people tend to start on the downstrokes, but in my particular mode of picking, I start on the upstroke, and that makes all the difference. On downstroke, I can't even do it. If I start on a downstroke, it's kind of a disaster, but I start on an upstroke. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll do that slow. E minor type of scale. One, two, three, four. Another thing you can do is rhythmic groupings of 6 using 3 notes per string, which I do like this. Those slow, again, are strict alternate picking, starting with an upstroke. Again, that was kind of an E minor scale, G major. In my own playing, I use a lot of those things, 4s, 5s, 6s. I try to mix them up a whole lot so that it's not too much or doesn't linger too long in any one thing. But one thing you can do, a lot of times it's just adding a little bit to something will change the whole way that it fits over the beat. So whereas regular 6s beat, if you add just, say, 2 notes in front of it, and then you start on the... But if you're on a beat, that throws the accents on a whole other part of the beat, so it has a whole different sound. And so you can do that starting it off, say, and then do 3 groups of 6, and then do it on the G string for your next 3 groups too, like. One, 2, 3, 4. There's There's 4 basic ways that I practice the rhythmic groupings of 6, using the 3 notes per string. And that is the straight 6s down that I already showed earlier. Then using that same shape going up the neck. Okay, and then you can have the ascending 6s. And then you can also do those backwards down across the neck. And so if you can do them all 4 together, it's kind of a good workout exercise. This tune we're about to play is called Rules of the Game. It's from my Powers of 10 album. It was the first song I recorded on the album, which took me a long time to get to the actual recording of the album, getting my studio and everything set up. And so it was the first song I recorded, and I had a lot of really happiness expressed in the song for finally getting to do my album and everything. Also, I wanted to make it real symphonic and have a lot of different counterpoint and a lot of the instruments, influenced by a lot of symphonic classical music. And the title is inspired by one of my favorite films by Jean Renoir called The Rules of the Game. Okay, up to now we've been talking about more standard types of passages that I used when I was starting out to build my coordination and dexterity. But now I want to get into some of the different kinds of unusual passages and licks that I do now that are a different sort of sound than that. One of them is the use of hammer-ons. And a lot of times people link hammer-ons and pull-offs together. They're almost always linked. But there's a way you can do hammer-ons that doesn't really involve any pull-offs, where it's just hammer-ons isolated by themselves. And likewise, there's some licks that are just strictly pull-offs. So I'd like to get into that right now. Here's one of those. Slow, that's... To play things like I just showed, which was hammer-ons, but mostly one note per string, crossing strings on each hammer-on. In order to get to that level, you first need to do exercises which will get you used to doing hammer-ons without pull-offs, doing more than one note per string. So a good exercise for that is this. That lick you play by doing 5 hammer-ons and then you pick the 6th note. That's the pattern all the way down. So let's run through it. Hammer, 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 pick. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on like that. A good thing to practice with that lick is to practice playing it in all different types of scales and positions. Major, which is the one I just showed, or in minor, or then you can get into switching the positions more rapidly. Like one way that's a very interesting chromatic sounding lick is you just switch the position up a half step each time you do the shape. So it's... And that's one of those licks that's very hard to do. And it's a strange lick too, because it's one of those things that sounds one way slow, but it sounds totally different fast. Slow, it doesn't sound like much, really. But when you play it fast, it has this effect like falling downstairs or something. Also, you can get into a lot of very wide intervals using that technique, and it gets harder and harder the wider you go with the interval. One would be a diminished type of interval. Slow, that's... Or you can get even wider to like an augmented style interval. And that's a real workout. But first you have to just be able to do it just in a regular position like this. And again, I would suggest practicing it just in a symmetrical shape. You don't have to do a specific scale with it, because once you learn the physical coordination, you can go almost anywhere with it. Just this shape across the guitar. And once you get that as a coordination, then you can go. Or even skip strings, or do, it can lead into any number of avenues. Another thing you can do is work on your pull-offs without a lot of hammer-ons being involved. One of the best exercises for that is this one, which is also a very good exercise for finger independence, because you're not utilizing a lot of the rolling motions forward or backwards. It really requires that each finger operate independently, and that's this scale right here. And then, just like in the other one when you went to a chromatic, going up with each string switch. The version of that in this would be doing it like this. And that's real hard. Let me see if I can do it here. Okay, that was an ascending version of the pull-off exercise. Now there's a descending version of that too, where you're picking one out of every 6 notes. It goes something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Now I was exaggerating the picking there, but when you perform it, you want to pick as softly as possible so that the picking notes and the hammer-on notes sound the same, or the pull-off notes in this case. Okay, but also you can do something kind of neat with this, since it's downstrokes. A lot of the things I'm doing are upstrokes, but this is all downstrokes. You can grip the pick tighter, and every time you hit the downstroke, accent it a lot and put a harmonic in there, and it makes kind of for an interesting sound. And you add another little trill in there if you go. And that's like. Okay, and this is the ascending version of the hammer-on type of pattern. Okay, now that's the basic way you can do that. That was in groups of 9s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. But what I find sounds good is if you mix up different rhythmic groupings of that exercise. So you do 6s, 9s, maybe throw in a 12. This particular lick, I'll do 2 9s, 1 6, and then a 12. So slow it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's. After you've covered those basic 4 hammer-on and pull-off exercises, you can start to get into the 1 note per string hammer-on type of territory. And a good way to start practicing that is just to do a triad of some sort. Just pick whatever one you want. And I usually do an upstroke on these kinds of things. But you start picking with an upstroke and then hammer on 2 other notes on 2 different strings. And once you get comfortable with that, you can try moving it to different sets of triads. So on this particular thing, I'll go. There's all kinds of directions you can go in with that triadic hammer-on type of approach, moving it all over the neck. Kind of a whole tone type scale or augmented. Slow, that is. Okay, and there's just, you can just do that for days. There's no limit to that. So I would encourage you to make up your own pattern. Just try any kind of triad you want to try in any kind of situation and make up your own variations. Then there's another way where you can, that's descending type of triads. Now there's another ascending type of triad you can do where it's like arpeggios. You're doing arpeggios essentially, but instead of playing them like sweeps, like you're picking every note of them, and sometimes finger picking. In my case, in the upward triads, I use my middle finger in conjunction with the pick to make some of the string skipping easier instead of jumping around with the pick. So in this, I'll do a triad lick like this. Kind of a F sharp minor arpeggio. Okay, a cool lick that you can use that utilizes some of those triadic hammer-on concepts is this mixed Lydian style lick. Okay, that lick slow is. Okay, the song Gray Pianos Flying is another song kind of like Rules of the Game, in that it's a strange mixture of symphonic classical music and rock band. So it's a kind of unusual fusion of those elements. The title came from my daughter. A lot of times I have trouble naming instrumental pieces because they don't really represent anything specific to me. It's just pure music. And so sometimes I'll ask people what they think it should be called, and I asked my 10-year-old daughter what she thought it should be called, and to her it meant Gray Pianos Flying, so that's why I called it that. A lot of the passages I like to play are kind of influenced by Charlie Parker and other bebop people, and the syncopation and some of the intervallic structure. But they don't necessarily have to be over jazz changes. You can employ a lot of those kinds of things over just rock music and pop music. I've done that for a while. So I'll show you a couple of the passages that I like to play. One is something like this. Okay, I'm going to break it down and do it slow. It's kind of an A dominant kind of thing. Here's another kind of bebop style lick that I like to play. You could use this over kind of a B dominant. One thing that I'm asked about a lot is some of the wide intervallic, diminished, and other type of string skipping playing that I do, usually based somewhat around a diminished tonality. I'll do it first in just the basic diminished key, say B. Okay, I take the basic diminished concept like that and I expand it out into a lot of different chromaticism and for a lot of real outside type playing. I use a lot of different techniques. Sometimes it's hammer-ons and pull-offs and sometimes it's picking. Like if I'm doing hammer-ons, a lot of times I'll double up on the first couple notes, give it a different kind of sound like this. Okay, slow, that's kind of like this. And then you move around the positions. Each group of 6 notes, you skip a string and then you move over to another fret. You know, you could go a half step up or a whole step up. Just try to mix it up and get a real outside kind of sound. Okay, and the thing to remember about that for the stretching is your thumb has to go way around the back of the neck, because if your thumb is over here, you'll never be able to do those kind of reaches. You have to really bring your thumb way around at the other side of the neck. And then a lot of the key is this first thing. You can't really just bar it and let it sit like a bar and then move it around. You have to work it along with the other fingers and actually pick it up from the G string when you're going over to the E string, and then when you're on the D string, you pick it up and go over to the B string. You can't just bar it. You have to actually... Also, the key with that lick is a certain amount of looseness, but you have to have a certain amount of tension to actually pull the thing off. So it's a real balance between relaxation and exertion, and it's just something you have to just keep practicing on until you get comfortable with it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And you can also do that lick picking every note. You know, and you can go on and on with it, and you might not want to do it that many times, but it's a great thing to throw in every now and then if you want to do something real outside sounding. The thing to remember that is getting the pick over the other string, and then to also pick it in such a way that it really makes a snap, and that gives it a lot of definition. And another thing that mixes it up and makes it sound kind of unusual is if you do different groups of notes. Like this will be 6s, and then it does a group of 9. So say you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6, 6, 9. This is a song from my album Powers of 10 called Epilogue for Lisa. It's one of my favorite songs, and it's also one of my favorite styles of playing the guitar, playing real slow and expressively. And then after I finish, I'm going to talk about some of the ways I've played in that, and I think you could learn from that. And I use the vibrato on this song in a way that's not blatantly vibrato. A lot of times people use it for... I'm using it in a very subtle fashion in this song to kind of emulate the way vocalists vibrato. Because on guitar, typically when you vibrato with your fingers, you're just moving the pitch up. You're oscillating it up from the original pitch. But when you vibrato with the vibrato bar, you're getting a smooth up and down. You're going below the pitch and above the pitch, and it has a very smooth sound. Also, you can bend up to notes in a certain way that you can't really do with your fingers. Or if you did, it would require a lot of thought because you'd have to go down a half step and do things such as that. So in phrases like... If I didn't use the vibrato, I'd have to do it like... or something like that. It'd be very awkward in a way. And also with the vibrato, you can get a much smoother response. I try to use a lot of different speeds for expressive purpose of vibrato. Sometimes it's effective to do a fast vibrato, and sometimes very, very slow. And then sometimes you can use a real extreme vibrato that may seem out of context sometimes, but if you just touch on it in a certain way, it'll give a certain character to it. Like sometimes in the phrase in that song, I'll go... and you just kind of touch on it for a minute, like... The guy that does some extreme vibratos on the guitar that's influenced me, and a lot of people a lot, is Jeff Beck. He does a lot of things like that. Sometimes he'll play something with just a little bit of something, that seems over the top, but if in the right quantities, even in a slow song or a ballad like that, it can be very expressive.
Coming up next, in a brief interview, we ask Shawn to explain his guitar and stage setup and talk about his musical influences.
Some of my influences were maybe Frank Marino then, and that's when I got into Hendrix and some other people. But really what turned me around on guitar and music were two different things. I saw Alan Holdsworth play live in concert in 1978, and I was about 14. And I didn't know who he was. I just showed up at the concert. It was with the band UK. I didn't even know who they were. I just went to the concert because it was some bargain concert, I think. And it just really changed my whole life about guitar and really made me see guitar in a whole other way. And you know, I thought I wanted to go in a direction like that after I'd seen him. And also the keyboard player that I ran into a couple years later that played in Black Oak, Arkansas, a band with me about 12, 13 years ago. He was a classical pianist, and he had learned from the time he was a kid to play a lot of classical pieces, a lot of Liszt and Brahms and Rachmaninoff. And up until then, classical music, I just didn't think much about it. It had always been, when I was a kid, it was just something that was pretty or something that was just kind of in a museum somewhere or something. But when I saw this guy really play this stuff live, it really had a big effect on me. And so I really saw the vibrancy and the aliveness of it and how it could still relate to any time. It's a timeless kind of music. So that really had a big effect. Copied some records, but I'm just a tremendous music fan. If I never even played an instrument, I'd still have all the records I have. And I'm really, first and foremost, I consider myself a music fan more than really even a player. I have about 6,000 albums of all styles of music, classical, jazz, everything. And I just love so many of the great people, and that inspires me so much that my own music is almost secondary to that in a way, you know. Yeah, this is a guitar that Ibanez built for me, and it has some of the neck is modeled after the guitar that I played the longest, which was a Roland guitar. It was the guitar that came with the original synthesizer, the GR300. I got it in about 79. I played that guitar for about 13 years or something. And so when I had Ibanez build me this guitar, I had to model the neck after that guitar, because Ibanez was actually the original manufacturer of the Roland guitars too. It was another Roland name, but Ibanez made it. And I always liked curly maple, and because I played that guitar so much, I'm really attracted to arch top guitars. I'm not real comfortable with a flat top on a guitar, so arch top is where it's at for me.
Any special electronics in it?
No, I tend to like just DiMarzio PAFs. These are, I think this is a PAF with a kind of a low magnetic pull, some new thing that they've kind of come out with. But my theory is toward weak pickups. I don't really like the real loud and hot pickups because I just hear too much of the electronics and too much of the fuzzy kind of sound. I think if the pickup is real weak and then you get the volume you need out of the amp, then you're hearing more of the wood and the string. It's just an overall better tone. Strings, well, I use Diodario strings, and I like all different gauges. Use 9s right now, but you know, sometimes I like to tune to E flat or even down to D. I might use a heavier set, but I'm really happy with the consistency of those strings, and we're good.
And guitar picks, just straight ahead.
Well, guitar picks, I use these Jim Dunlop Jazz 3 picks. I like kind of a small pick that I can fit in kind of the first joint of my finger, and I like the point. I can't use Jazz 2 or Jazz 1. I have to have like the point that's on the Jazz 3. They changed the formula a little bit on these, and I kind of like the older ones better, but I use the new ones right now. Live, I try to play in quadraphonic. I use usually 4 amplifiers. I have one set of effects, usually a delay or a chorus or compressor maybe sometimes, that go through all the amplifiers. Then each amplifier, there's one amplifier that's in real time, and then each amplifier after that is delayed a few milliseconds from the previous one. So if you have 4 amplifiers, you might have one in real time, then you might have one delayed 10 milliseconds. The whole signal is delayed. Then the next one might be 12 or 13, the next one might be 18 milliseconds. And that evolved out of playing a lot of top 40 and bar bands and stuff, and so many of the rooms I played just had atrocious acoustics. So instead of depending on it ever sounding good like that, I just decided to create my own acoustic environment through using the delays and different amplifiers. And Also, I use these Holmes amplifiers I've had for almost 20 years. It was the first amplifier I ever bought, and I'm still using it. I bought it 20 years ago. And then I've got this tube-powered overdrive, the Westbury, that's been discontinued for a long time. I got it probably 8 or 9 years ago. And the Holmes aren't that great in and of themselves, and the Westbury isn't that great in and of itself, but the two together really make something that's it's a real smooth sound. It's hard to find in a lot of the newer amps today. I find a lot of them sound kind of cold. Well, that's about all the time we have. I really like to thank my good friend Shawn Rickman for coming and playing such great drums with me on this thing today. And also, I'd like to urge you to go out and get my album Powers of 10 on Warner Brothers if you haven't, because I think you'd probably enjoy that a lot. And I'd like to thank my friends at Ibanez, Mace Bailey and Chris Kelly, for really making this beautiful guitar for me. So, thanks a lot again. See you.